All right, I will. It's 12:05, so I'll go ahead and intro George Brown, who I met as a mentor at the collab, and ever since then, he's been quite a bit of my mentor and like an uncle to my kids. So
Yeah.
George's family, he's also a part of the Inc. family, and has given this talk on purpose meets passion a few times, and every single time I hear it, I get energized and something new comes up. So I'm excited about George's pep talk, and I'll mute my my mic so that I won't talk over it. Because it gets me excited every time. So I'll turn it over to George, and he'll get started with his presentation.
Great. Well, again, I'm George Brown. The company that I have in the BDC is Aegle Gear. And for a reference, in some of the points when I talk about business, I'm going to talk about how Aegle Gear applies to those business theory, more or less. So Aegle Gear builds healthcare performance apparel, better known for most people as scrubs. The presentation starts off with a little poem from Charles Bukowski, and I find it to be very relevant to where we as entrepreneurs are, and sometimes we're unsure of ourselves, and I think that this poem kind of brings it out of you. So I'll get started with that, and then we'll move into the presentation. People might be impressed that I know how to spell entrepreneur. It took me years to learn that without spell check.
If it doesn't come bursting out of you in spite of everything, don't do it. Unless it comes unasked out of your heart and your mind and your mouth and your gut, don't do it. If you're doing it for money or fame, don't do it. If you're doing it because you want women in your bed, don't do it. If it's hard work, just thinking about doing it, don't do it. If you're trying to write like somebody else, forget about it. If you have to wait for it to roar out of you, then wait patiently. If it never does roar out of you, do something else. If you first have to read it to your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your parents or to anybody at all, you're not ready. Don't be dull and boring and pretentious. Don't be consumed with self-love. Don't do it. Unless it comes out of your soul like a rocket. Don't do it unless the sun inside you is burning your gut. Don't do it. When it is truly time, if you have been chosen, it will do it by itself. And then it will keep on doing it until you die, or it dies in you. There is no other way, and there never was.
Okay, now let's see why this isn't moving to the next slide. There we go. All right, thank you. That poem, I think it gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. I think it's really good, and I think that when you're not sure of yourself, it's not time. And entrepreneurism is so hard that you have to put every breath of your life into it. And I think that, again, the poem really brings out that feeling. And if people have not listened to Charles Bukowski before, well, he's no longer alive. He was a vicious drunk. But in any case, his poems are incredible, and there's probably a half a dozen that I think are equally as good as the one we just listened to. So the first part of the presentation, I like to talk about the what, how, and why. And my guess is most people would be somewhat experienced with this whole process of what, how, and why, and Simon Sinek being the kind of the author of this whole theory. And what's important is what you do, how you do it, and why you do it. And the what, most people in a company can explain what we do. For Aegle Gear, we build scrubs. It's simple. What is what we do? Why would this not be forwarding? Sorry. Oh, maybe I do it this way. There we go. Yeah. Some of your company are going to know how you do it. You know, what's the secret sauce? How do we build the product? But usually only a few know why you do it. And that's so important to teach the entire company why. Often you find CEOs or founders of, you know, companies believing, hey, I'm the only one that needs to know the why. And frankly, a lot of CEOs don't even know why they're doing it, but you must find your why. And in Aegle Gear's case, the why is to build the most comfortable, best performance, and safe uniforms for what I feel is the most important workforce in our country, the healthcare worker. And that's why we do what we do. So the next illustration is a triangle. And I think the triangle is more informative to show kind of how it goes in a corporate structure where, let me again move this, you've got the why, the how, and as you go down the triangle, you can see the larger segments kind of show what the majority of your company, you know, the majority of the company is going to understand the what, fewer are going to understand the how, and then usually only the top understands the why. And I think if you follow that, it's wrong. You really need to have everybody understand the why. And I'll talk to that on another slide as well. This is another chart that I've always liked. It's a great book that goes back to probably 20 years ago that was written by Malcolm Gladwell. And if you haven't read it, I absolutely recommend it. It's essential reading called The Tipping Point. Gladwell has written a series of books. He studies social instances and people, and he's got a unique view on how things happen. So his theory on the tipping point is as an entrepreneur, if you're trying to sell your product, you must get to the innovator first. And the innovator traditionally makes up about 2.5% of your client base. Who's the innovator? That's the hipster. That's the guy that has influence on other people. You know, in Aegle Gear's case, I would say Dr. Mike or Dr. Oz are two people that would be innovators. If they wear our scrubs on TV or in social media, it's probably going to get other people looking and wondering why they have those. From there, you have to get the next group, which is the early adapters. And again, the early adapters are the hipsters. They know about it before it's really hit the mainstream. And they're the ones that, you know, when Nike made the short edition shoe that only a few people could get, they're the ones that got it. The innovators are probably the ones that Nike sent it to for free. And once you combine the innovators with the early adapters, that's when you get the tipping point. And the tipping point all of a sudden just frees things up and gets you, you know, onto what would be a strong business and eventually own it. Early majority, you know, to use the analogy of the Nike shoe, they're the ones that, may have went out and bought a Nike similar to the one that got bought up by the early adopters. The late majority, they're the ones that kind of are the laggards. They follow, or actually he calls it the laggards at the end. The laggards are just simply, hey, I go to Kohl's and I just need to buy a tennis shoe, athletic shoe, and I'll buy whatever on sale. But as you grow, you know, your logo and your brand becomes more and more popular. So it's super important as an entrepreneur to capture that innovator, or at least identify who an innovator would be in your market, and then hope that those innovators can speak to your early adopters. This is something I just threw in because I kind of just like the dichotomy of the two words, value and trust, trust and value. And I think if you ask people, you'll get 100 different definitions of either word or both words put together. But trust is a value, and value is something that must be gained by trust. And some people could simply look at value as, hey, it's a good deal on the scrubs. They're, based at this price, and simply price could cause what the value is. But in our case, at Aegle Gear, our scrubs sell for over $100 a set. Clearly the most expensive that are out there. How do we build value into that? Well, we must get trust of the consumer. We're going to have to speak to our consumer. We're going to have to do studies showing the antimicrobial capabilities of our product, showing the fact that our products will last much longer than the current scrubs that they may be wearing. Being able to ship within 3 days and being consistent about that. I write a handwritten note in every set of scrubs that goes out to our customers. That builds trust, and trust in turn builds value. So I think it's really important to think about that as you're developing your product or moving along. The 4 P's of marketing, most folks know the 4 P's: product, place, price, and promotion. It's not important for me to go into those 4 items right now, but I think most importantly are the other P's: passion, purpose, and partnership. Passion. If you're not passionate about your business, why even bother? And I think this goes back to the poem by Charles Bukowski. It's really got to come burning out of you for people around you to get caught up in what you're doing. Purpose. I think purpose is another really important aspect of the P's that I mentioned. Is your product purposeful? Oftentimes, and Alexis has seen this, and many have seen, that we build a product that really isn't purposeful. Therefore, it's not going to gain the attention. You might have been psyched about it, but there's not a whole lot of purpose in it. And then finally, I add partnership to the P's because I think that partnership is really important. I rarely see an opportunity built by one individual. And I think if you look at some of the greatest companies that this country has, like Apple Computers, Steve Jobs didn't do it by himself. He had Wozniak in the background who was his partner. And without him, there would be no Apple. It goes for Bill Gates, who had, I'm at a loss for his name, but his partner in the beginning. There would have not been his Microsoft without that partnership. And, in my case, I have Uli Becker as my partner. Uli was the former CEO of Reebok. And with Aegle Gear, we tried to build purposeful scrubs, much similar to athletic apparel, so that they would have form, function, safety, and performance. Your network. This is another one. This is something that I've actually practiced my entire life almost, and I use this graphic, which is supposed to be a baseball team with a coach. I carry a baseball team in my head, and the baseball team are different players to do different positions. So there may have been people that I met throughout my career that I say, wow, this person really impressed me. I'd like to have them on my team someday. So I just kind of keep a mental Rolodex. In fact, Uli Becker happened to be one of those guys when I worked for Adidas with him. Uli was a friend, and I always enjoyed what he had to say. And there was many years in between when Uli and I last spoke, and when we decided, when we got to speak again, I had mentioned Aegle Gear to him, and he jumped on board for the process. And I think, again, your network is so important, and building a strong network is important. And always remember, everything will end up coming back to your business at some point. So you want to keep yourself, with a good reputation amongst your network. Some people take a long time to develop the metrics of their business, and I think that's a mistake. Once you start developing metrics, you'll find yourself having a much easier ability to move forward with your company or the products that you're building. An entrepreneur that probably a lot of us know, Richard Rhett, who his company is Sierra Madre. I mean, he is a tactician. Everything that he does is built on metrics. He measures everything, and if he gets the positive income, that will form him to move again. If he gets the negative outcome, he doesn't do it. And by doing that, you save a lot of time and a lot of money. So, metrics will be in many areas of your company. What are your production metrics? For Aegle Gear, could be timeliness of how we get product, the metrics of costs. If I order 600 pieces, I'm at X price. If I order 10,000 pieces, I'm at Y price. Customer satisfaction metrics. You start to your reputation is built through your customer satisfaction. Start to learn, start to find out who your 4-star customers are. Start to use those great reviews to bring more people in. When a customer complains about a product, are you reacting upon it? Is that a constant problem with the item that you're trying to sell? If so, you need to keep a metric on it so that you can make changes in the future. If you don't pay attention to those things, you might be getting those calls on a daily basis and never be able to fix it. Sales metrics, I think, are obvious. You must keep good data on how your sales calls are going. How many phone calls does it take to get a meeting? How many meetings does it take to close a deal? How long does it take to close a deal? How many people would be in the decision-making process in order to close a deal? Those are metrics that, again, on every deal you do, if you save those metrics, you start to see, hey, I know I'm not going to close this deal for another 18 months. And then you try to fill your pipeline so that you have deals closing on a regular basis through that 18-month period. Social media metrics, I'm not very good on social media, but I think, clearly the metrics that social media pertain are very important. How many followers is the influencer you're using? How many hits you're getting? Are you drawing people to your website? Yada, yada, yada. And of course, advertising as well. Advertising in perhaps today's terms is really social media. But again, we should be keeping strong metrics on what we are doing. Your company's culture, and this is kind of a goofy slide that I use. It's a group of zombies. And I think it goes back to that slide earlier with Simon Sinek's what, how, and why, and how important it is to teach your employees the why of the business. There's a kind of a story about in ancient times, they had a group of people that were asked to build a church. And some people were told to build a wall while others were told to build the church or the cathedral. Those that were told to build the cathedral finished far faster than those that were told to build a wall. And I think that you have to let your staff know the purpose of your business. That includes, the accountants, the office managers. All of those folks need to know what the end result of your company is so they can really jump on board. So, let's wipe out zombies. Raising money, this is difficult. And there's lots of theories on raising money. How do you value your company? Valuations are all over the place when people are looking to value their company in order to determine how much stock or ownership they give for an individual investment. Valuations increase when you have a good track record. If you recently exited a company on a positive note, chances are people are going to be willing to pay more for your new startup because of your past track record. Are there any patents? Patents help you develop barriers to entry. So a patent will add value to your valuation. Is it a subscription model? Why do I mention subscription model? People love recurring revenue. If you're getting money every month, essentially you probably have paid off the cost of your product within the first few months of doing business. Then every month thereafter that you're getting paid, it's just gravy. What sector are you in? Certain people will pay more to be in different sectors. Clearly, healthcare is a very strong sector for strong valuations. And I think that as sectors kind of diminish in population size, the valuations go down. If it's a very few people that potentially can buy your product, it's not likely that you're going to get a strong valuation bump for that. The next part of this raising money, are you looking for partners or are you looking for investors? And some might say they're the both thing. Well, the way I look at it, investors just bring money. If you've got something hot and people are lining up to invest with you, you should be interviewing your investors. You want to get partners. Partners are helpful. Partners in Aegle Gear's case may be folks that work at a hospital, maybe have influence with a healthcare facility and can help us sell product. So, if sometimes you're desperate and you have to take money from anybody, but if you have people lining up for your product, you want to have partners, not just simply investors. And governance, I think, goes along with that. When you're choosing your board, try to, don't bring friends in, things like that. Bring people that can influence the business that you're doing, not just tell you what you should be doing, from a day-to-day basis through a board meeting, but being able to go out in the community and help build your business. That's the governance that you should be looking for. Clearly, Alexis knows this, the business canvas model. And this is something, again, I highly, highly recommend that you download this from the internet. If you just Google a business canvas model, you'll find dozens of different kind of versions of the one that's on here now. This is something that at one time, and it still may be used at Collab, I'm not quite certain, but it's activities that you must comply or work with in order to build your business. So in the next couple of slides, I'll go through those. Key partners. I mean, who are your key partners? Are they joint venture partners? Is it another company that you can join with that would have synergy? Key partners are your suppliers. I'm using a couple of different companies, one that builds the secret sauce for our antimicrobial capabilities. My key partnership there is the hopes that he doesn't sell this product to another scrub developer. So I have to have a key partnership with this person. Strategic alliances. Would I consider aligning myself with a healthcare provider, perhaps, that allows us to use their name, or in another case, would I line up with another scrub company that wants to co-market my brand? And then, of course, partners in legal and accounting. Don't underestimate the need for good legal and accounting work. Going through this COVID epidemic right now, people are missing the ability to capture PPP money because they don't have good financials. And, frankly, it's pretty simple to run a report that they're looking for in order to get one of these loans. But you have to have that stuff in order, and you have to have it fast, because this, a lot of that money came and gone fairly quick. And then, of course, good legal representation is important. Certainly in my life, there's been many times I was like, ooh, I should have had that written down and signed. And it'll nip you in the butt down the road. So I definitely think key partners are very key. Key activities, research and development. I mean, who's doing this for you? Can you get a white paper written that would help benefit moving forward? So, R&D for us was testing the antimicrobial capability of our garments. For me, I wanted the antimicrobial capability to last through at least 100 industrial washes, and I wanted a 99.99% reduction when a contaminant got on the garment within an hour of it touching the garment. And we were able to obtain that. So, it's good research, good design. We hired a great designer out of New York that had a lot of expertise in designing athletic clothing, and we kind of parallel ourselves with athletic type, uniforms and comfort. Production, again, it's a major activity. Who's going to produce your product? Are you building it yourself? Are you going to use a third party? In Aegle Gear's instance, rather than having the large cost of multiple employees, we use a third party who sources all of our fabric and then has it built and in factories and brought to us, and they have ownership in these factories so that we know we're getting great great returns on our product, and they're keeping care of it. It's very expensive, particularly if you're building apparel in Asia. These guys will cheat you if you don't have boots on the ground, and a small startup can't afford to have boots on the ground in Asia, where if you can work with somebody that does, they're going to watch your production line and make sure you're getting the product that you ordered. In marketing, Chattanooga is full of great marketing firms, and we've used several, and Whiteboard primarily has been our group. So, again, key activity. Sales, how are you going to use sales? Are you going to build a network of salespeople? Are you hiring salespeople? Is your sales done through the internet? And in Aegle Gear's cases, we are a direct-to-consumer business through the internet. Value proposition. This goes back to, again, that trust value comment on the earlier slide. What is the value of your product to the customer? What's going to build your trust? What's unique about it? Scrubs on a whole are a commodity item. Basically, they're just covering your body so that you can go to work clothed. And we looked at it completely different and a unique way. In fact, I hesitate ever to call what we make scrubs. Often I have to use the word scrubs because people don't understand otherwise. But I like to call our products healthcare performance apparel. So they're unique. We've done things like gusseting crotches, four-way stretches, ripstop nylons, putting belts, flies, yada, yada, yada in our product. So it is new and it is unique. Performance, does your product perform well? Clearly, in our case, it does. And, you should look at that with the products that you're building. Design, our designs are, we look like a set of scrubs, but if you look closely at our product, clearly you can see that they're designed differently. And brand, can you build your brand? Brand's very important. In the scrub business, brand has never really been important, but we know millennials like to align themselves with purposeful brands that give back. And we wanted to build a brand so that people realize Aegle Gear, it's that company that builds those great healthcare performance apparel items, and they really believe in us, the healthcare worker. Value proposition, where are you priced? Frankly, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're the most expensive out there, and I'm never going to apologize for making the most expensive. In fact, I think it's an insult to the healthcare worker to build cheap garments for healthcare workers. These are very important workers, and very important, particularly in this day, to our society, that they stay safe and comfortable. They've got tough jobs. Risk reduction. My product, I think, reduces risk, reduces pain. The antimicrobial capability is going to help you from spreading disease from one bed to the next, or perhaps taking that disease home with you to your family. So I am going to move on. Customer relationships. People like to buy from people who know them. Well, clearly once you get really large, it's not easy to know all of your customers, but people can know who your brand is and know what you stand for, why you're purposeful. The next bullet says stand for something. We're standing for building apparel that for the most important workforce that we believe is out there, and building the best product for them. Invoke the inner ego. We're not there yet, and it will take some time, but we want to be that logo where people say, oh, you're wearing the expensive stuff. That's the really good stuff. I'd love to have a set of that. A lot of times I like to use the analogy of BMW. When BMW first started, all of their cars were quite expensive, and they sold expensive cars. To this day, they're still expensive. But what's happened is now they have the BMW 3 or the 1 Series, the 2 Series. Those can be bought by, a relatively large portion of our population. But you know what? The status in that is, the inner ego is, you get the same keychain that you get if you buy the 7 Series. So when you go into a restaurant and you leave your keys on the counter as you're eating, they see the BMW. That, it's kind of invoking the inner ego. And another one goes back to the how and why is, your company should really know your customer. That means anybody, your employees are your best representatives. They're the best advertising you possibly can have. And then, opportunities to upsell your product. Are there other things that you can bring in that would allow you to, gain a better relationship with that customer through, perhaps in our case would be selling surgical masks made out of our antimicrobial material. Customer segments, is your product something for the mass market? In other words, can you sell it to everybody? So you have to be less interested in focusing in on one dynamic. Is it a niche market or a segmented market? In our case, Aegle Gear, it is a niche market. We're going after the healthcare worker. However, the healthcare worker is a very large portion of our workforce. In fact, it's about 11% of the entire workforce. So if you look at it, basically 1 in 10 people that are working today are healthcare workers. Those are the folks that we need to focus on. I don't need to focus on anybody else because other people just don't need scrubs. And then, of course, there are opportunities. From what I understand, scrubs are worn in prisons. Scrubs are worn in nuclear facilities. So there are other opportunities. And then, a segmented market may be going after those nuclear facilities, or even pushing the segment of, say, disease control, or a burn unit in a hospital where the chance of disease is far greater than other areas of the hospital. So they might want Aegle Gear's product. Key resources. What are your physical resources? Do you have a good relationship? Are you bringing in the product that you need? Intellectual resources. Do you have people that have that mental aptitude to be able to build your product? Are you getting the science done that helps develop your product so it's better? And then, of course, your human resources. Channels of distribution, awareness. Are people aware of what you make? How are you getting that done? Is there an evaluative process where you can, evaluate your communication and channel with folks? Again, I think that goes back a little bit to metrics. Purchase, a channel of purchase through us. Again, we're direct to consumer, and we try to go through the internet primarily, and then it becomes word of mouth where we sell directly to some healthcare institutions. Delivery channel, how is it being delivered? How are you looking at it? Are you forming relationships with FedEx, UPS, United Parcel Service, United States Post Service to get the best delivery? How can you get it there quicker? Can you get it there cheaper? And then after sales, are you communicating with your clients afterward? And as I mentioned earlier, I write a note when I send a product, and I even see in our reviews sometimes that, people say, and I got a handwritten note in my product. I know I like when I get a handwritten note from somebody, but that's, that's a before sale item. But an after sale item being similar to that is occasionally I'll just pull emails from our sales list and send, they've had the product for 6 months, and I'll just send a note to them, ask them how it's holding up. Tell me what's good. Tell me what's bad. Again, it shows that I care. And, by doing that, I've increased my repeat customer rate considerably. Right now, our repeat customer rate's hovering between 40 and 50%. Cost structure, what's the cost of everything above? What are your fixed costs? What are your variable costs? How can you affect those and work those? That's something that, clearly somebody in your company should be working on a daily basis. And that goes back to having good accounting and being able to count those beans to make sure that you're not wasting money. Value driven versus cost driven. Are your costs based on the value of what you're proposing and building, or is it just simply costs? Economies of scope and economies of scale. An economy of scope is, can I be more efficient when I build my product? So for instance, when they cut a pattern for a shirt, there's leftover fabric. That leftover fabric's enough that I can build a mask out of that fabric. So that's economies of scope. I can make, where normally, that would cost me $20 for that piece of fabric. Whatever's left over gets thrown away. I sell that top, say, for $40. I've only made $40. Well, now I can take that same piece of fabric that cost me $20, get a $6 mask out of it, and sell it for $46. And then, economies of scale, most people are familiar with economies of scale is, as you grow, can you do things cheaper? Well, chances are once you're, maybe $1 million company, you have a CFO. Well, when you're a $5 million company, you still have the same CFO and possibly not have to hire anybody in addition. So that's a way of building your economies of scale. Revenue streams, transaction revenue. I sell a product of Aegle Gear on the internet. That's a transaction. That's transaction revenue. Recurring revenue. We don't have recurring revenue at Aegle Gear, but perhaps we could have a subscription model where we ask customers to sign up, and every 90 days they get a new set of scrubs, and perhaps you give them a discount, but then you've got them in a commitment. And recurring revenue, once again, is something that investors get excited about because they know that they have a constant stream of revenue coming to them. Rental revenue, another opportunity. Can you rent? Can you rent potentially some of your office space, your manufacturing space? Can you rent your products? There are uniform rental services where you drop off your uniforms on Monday, you pick up the dirty ones on Friday, and you continue that business. So rental revenue could be potentially something that Aegle Gear could do as well. And then finally, to wrap things up, going back to the poem, if you're going to try, go all the way. You can't half-ass this business or any business. It's just I'm not a major fan of Shark Tank, but certainly like anybody, I've seen it once or twice or perhaps more than that. But one of the things that I always like with Mark Cuban is he mentions, he calls people entrepreneurs. And I think that's true. There are certain people that are clearly entrepreneurs. Richard Brett is an entrepreneur. But then there are many people that just want to be an entrepreneur and just kind of half-ass it. And then this is something that I stand for. It's something that I learned later in life and wish I would have learned it earlier. And so it's one thing I try to end almost any of my conversations with: give back. Giving back is so, so important. We have to unite all of ourselves. And so from what we get, we can make a living. What we give, however, makes a life. Try to give back. That can be just simply, doing presentations, talking about business, making a donation, helping folks when they're down on their knees, working to get PPE to people who can't get out of their homes, etc. So that's my presentation, and you can see my email, george@aeglegear.com. I'm happy to share this presentation via Dropbox. It's too large to send an email. My phone number, 917-208-7095. Prefer texts first, because if it's a number that I don't recognize, it's likely I'm not going to pick it up. But please reach out to me if you'd like to. So let me get back to the screen here. All right. So that's my talk. I see Carolyn joined us. Hey, Carolyn. She's probably on mute.
So good. It's always my favorite.
I like anybody, always wish you had a larger audience, but if it can be shared through the recording, that's great. I was texting Victoria and I was like, we need to do an encore and figure out where else we can post this video. So, wait a minute, Carolyn's being dangerous. She's driving right now.
Oh, Lord. Turn that camera off, Carolyn.
In any event, it's been a while since I've given that presentation, but, each time I give it, it still holds up. I think there's, I went fast through it, but, if you spend some time on it, you get the business canvas model. I think it helps your business. So happy to help you guys. Do you think
that going through that exercise, the business canvas exercise, is useful for someone in the season they're in right now? Like entrepreneurs right now are trying to figure out, do they hunker down and ride through this season? Do they close up shop? They're laying off or potentially laying off employees or letting people go and shrinking their overhead. Do you think that going through this is useful for them? And if so, which part? Do they go back to the why, or do they go back through the canvas?
Well, I think the business canvas model is very relevant right now, Alexis, and I think it's a good question and probably something that we could talk about, for an extended period of time. One of my theories when I was a retailer is, if you think next year is not going to be as good as this year, what is the first thing a retailer does? They reduce their buy. So if you've reduced your buy, what's going to happen? You're going to have less sales. You can't expect the business to grow if you're buying less. Mm-hmm. And so you're basically perpetuating the chance that your business is going to be down. And I think that, clearly we're in untested waters right now, so people really don't know what to do. But you have to keep that whole aspect of, hey, yeah, we're in business and we're going to continue to do business. But when you look at the Canvas model, who are your key partners? Can you lean on them? Can you look for dating terms so that you don't have to pay? They know you're solvent. They know you'll be able to pay at some point, but can they float you an order so that you can conserve cash right now and keep employees on, which is very important. What are you doing? Where can you reduce, some of your fixed costs perhaps? Things that really don't affect the business nor affect your staff. Those are the things that you should look at. And even calling on your customers right now, I don't think is a bad idea. Communicate with your customers. Hey, things are bad right now. Would you consider jumping on and buying another set of scrubs right now to help us out as well? So I think the business canvas model, and you can look at every aspect of it and see, why you should be looking at it harder in these trying times than when things are normal.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We should do a business canvas workshop, when we can all touch each other again.
Yes, you took the thought right out of my head. I think that's a good idea.
Remember back in the day we used to do, the large paper ones, print a bunch of them and let's get people to fill them out. And, like I would recommend if you're really an entrepreneur, you have a couple copies of it. You have one to hang on your bathroom window, one to keep in your car, one to keep on your desk, because you got to stare at it, because it reminds you of who you are and what you're trying to be.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good idea. We're going to stick a pin in that. That might be something that we can come up with for next month.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unless there's other questions, we can jump off. And hey, Steve and Carolyn, I appreciate you guys jumping on. And
hey, could I jump in here, George, for just a second?
Yeah.
Is it appropriate to give an advertisement for Aegle Gear, because that's what I'm getting ready to do?
Go for it.
Well, anyway, I became acquainted with George, even though he's been in the incubator for a number of years, probably in mid-October or so. I'm trying to figure out something to get for my daughter for her birthday on November the 4th.
Day after my birthday.
Okay. And I said, I'll get her a pair of scrubs. I know there's this guy in the BDC that has scrubs. They're supposed to be really good. So we started a dialogue. I ordered her a pair of scrubs for her birthday in early November. Then for Christmas, on her Christmas list was more scrubs from that guy in Chattanooga. So she's a veterinarian and she's in Florida, unfortunately, her and my granddaughters and her husband, but she loves the scrubs, George, and I really appreciate you. Your customer service is really good, because I remember, of course, one time I ordered the wrong color or the wrong size or something. We had to, recalibrate the order, and you were very accommodating. So if anybody out there is listening,
you're speaking to the customer service.
Well, I know that. But
even if I had 100 people working here, that's important. And that's the way, like getting, read your reviews. What are people impressed by? Got my order in 3 days. As Americans, we want things instantly. So, do it. It just means that you have to be on top of your orders. That's all.
Well, my daughter just loves the construction and the design and all the little pockets and things that she can use that she didn't have on her normal scrubs. So thank you very much. And I'm sure I'll be ordering more sometime soon.
We've done really well with veterinarians. In fact, we supplied a big order, about $20,000 worth to Australia for Vets for Compassion, it was called. And it was a bunch of veterinarians that were doing volunteer work for rehabilitating a lot of the animals that were injured during the fires. So,
wow.
Cool. Yeah. And they like our product because it's good in the field. It's just durable. It's comfortable. They can move in it, and it lasts.
Well, Lauren is very happy, so thank you.
Good deal. All right, folks.
We don't have any more questions. Thank you, George, for your time.
All righty. We'll see you soon.
Okay, we'll see you. Bye.